sing a song called With All I Am.
Good morning, church. Good morning. What a kick in the pants to be here today in Hawaii with all my Hawaiian homies and some of my mainland friends too that are here. So good to see all of you here today. I have to call up my little bride for just a moment. Come on. Come on. You guys need to know that this woman has tolerated me for 50 years. Whoa. And she doesn't look any worse for the wear, does she? I have taken good care of her. She won't to say something?
Okay,
Oh,
she said.
man. Well, we couldn't put it off. Our anniversary was actually in October, but we were kind of wrapped up around the volleyball soccer tournament that weekend in college. And I had to do some announcing, and so we said, well, let's just go in November. 2 good weeks here, and we're including Thanksgiving week, so we're here for a couple of weeks and just excited to be back in the Kabbalah Church. I was here in May of 2017, and some of you look very familiar. Some of you don't, but that's okay. Glad you're here. When I was pastoring, I got up once and told the congregation, I said, it's great to see some strange faces in the audience. And my wife got me afterwards. She said, why would you call people strange faces? So I just say new faces now. So, yeah, we're glad to be here. But thank you so much for the music. Appreciate that so much. That was delicious. Thank you. You know, the Bible said, taste of the Lord, it's easy to do it, right? And He is. I love the fact that, you know, if you look at the beginning of the Bible in Genesis there, you see that it opens up in a garden, and in Revelation it closes in a garden city. Is that amazing? In the beginning, God says to eat freely. In the end, He says, drink freely. Isn't that amazing? I love that. And all from Genesis to Revelation, what we find in Scripture is not just a tablet of instruction, but a table of food. Taste of the Lord and see that He's good. And delight yourself in fatness in Him. I've delighted myself in fatness and a lot of other things, but I want to include that as well. Well, you guys, it's wonderful to be here. I love coming to this island. We've been coming here since 2001, and we come over every year whether we need to or not. And it's just one of those things that I'm willing to sacrifice and enjoy, especially coming from Lincoln, Nebraska this time of year. It is cold. I sat on the plane Tuesday morning and looked at my weather app, and it said 9 degrees. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Okay? And 9 degrees. Isn't that something that we're sitting there with blonde hair and blue ears? And thinking, man, we got to get out of this place. And landed in Lahui that evening, and wow, what a change. Now, it's not that cold all the time in Lincoln, okay? Sometimes it actually gets colder. But this is very unseasonable for us. And what I'm seeing is everywhere on this planet, things are unseasonable, right? Everybody's saying, well, you should have been here last year. This is really weird this year. We were here in May. We stayed up at the Cliffs in Princeville, and rain. Man, you guys are blessed, right? Yeah, there's one Christian writer said that the refreshing drops of rain, the blessings of God, are as numerous as the refreshing drops of rain. So please feel blessed on this island. And it's that period of Thanksgiving. And of course, the Christian lives Thanksgiving every day. Do they not? We are thankful to God for the amazing gifts that we have on this planet. Even the poorest of the poor of us on the mainland or here in Kauai should be very grateful for life and for what God has done to enrich and bless their existence. And we have so much to look forward to as Christians, right? We know how the story ends. Is that amazing or what? We know how this thing is going to end. And it's just going to be a blessing after blessing. But anyway, we're glad to be here. We have a friend in the audience, Amy. I won't tell her to stand up, but she'll probably hit me whereas Kathy has to live with me. But meet Amy afterwards and give her some hugs and love on her and tell her how great. We just met her on Wednesday, and she's now a lifelong friend of ours. So we're glad that she's here. Welcome, Amy. Glad you're here. So I want to take you to a text. First of all, before you open in your Bibles, Jesus in John 17 was praying to the Father for oneness among His people. Really enjoyed the Sabbath school lesson. That was beautiful because we are called into oneness before and under the love of a holy God. You know, God is holy, holy, holy. And love is one of the greatest attributes that He has given to us so that we can at least partially understand who He is and what He's all about. And when we love other people, we are showing them a partial revelation of the Father, aren't we? We're showing. And Jesus said in John 17:3, love this verse. He said that His Father, He said, I pray that they be one as we are one. And he said, this is eternal life, that they might know you and Jesus Christ whom you sent. Now, why would he say that they might know you, the only true God, and Jesus Christ whom you sent? Because there's a lot of stuff going on out there with the name of God on it. Mm-hmm. And we need to really test the spirits, don't we? But the greatest revelation of God is found in his word, is it not? Amen. This is where we find out who he is and what he's all about. But also, he's given us the book of nature as well, hasn't he? And believe it or not, he's given us little crazy things that we would take so for granted if we didn't take time to reflect in our minds what's happening before us. Now, let me show you how this happens. I want you to go back to 1 Corinthians chapter 1. And Mike, I've got it down pat here, buddy. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 26. Oh, this is so funny. These are great moments in sports. Brothers, Paul says, he's talking to the Corinthian church. A church that is divided on many levels, unlike what we see today in our church, right? A church is divided. He says, brothers, think of what you were when you were called. And he wants them to think back. Well, what were you before you were called? Not many of you were wise by human standards. Can I get a testimony? Yeah, I used to work in admissions, doing recruiting for the college at Union, and I got to see kids' transcripts that came across my desk, applying for admission to college. And I look at some of those transcripts and I go, wow. Like, they were unlike mine. These kids had 3.8s, 3.9s, and I said, how boring. I said, if you want to see a report card with variety, I had a report card with variety. And so I can testify that every letter grade there represented. But look at this. He says, not many of you were wise by human standards. Okay, I can testify. Not many of you were influential. Testify again, right? Who listens to what I have to say? Nobody. Not many of you were of noble birth. Again, I can testify. But I love this three-letter word. Paul is introducing now a totally different theme of thought. But God chose the what? The foolish. Did I get a testimony? God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. God chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. He chose the lowly things of this world and the despised things and the things that are not to nullify the things that are, so that no one may boast before him. Let me show you how that works. I'm going to give you 3 vignettes real quickly. So don't if I come down. I'm going to mess up your photographs. I had a great friend that lives in Phoenix, Arizona. And by the way, I get on those people all the time. I said, no wonder we're not in heaven. Because you guys are not praying hard enough for heaven. You live in it. You know, their summers are crazy, but you people too. Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot here. We live in heaven here, right? In Kauai. The weather's always nice and good. You need to be in Nebraska where you're going to pray hard for heaven. But Bobby's living in Phoenix, Arizona, pastoring at that time at the Camelback Seventh-day Adventist Church. He and Mel had been married for 12 years. He's gone for the week. He's gone out to do a week of spiritual emphasis at a school. And so Friday afternoon, he hops on a flight, gets back into Phoenix, and grabs his car he left at the airport, drives across Phoenix, gets to his house, and all of a sudden, when he is opening the door to go in, his wife is opening the door to go out. He said it was the most uncanny thing in the world how their timing was almost impeccable. As he's reaching and touching the doorknob, opening it, it's opening from the inside too. So here they are, and all of a sudden they look at each other like she was not expecting him at that time. Well, he definitely wasn't expecting her, with suitcases in hand at that time, to be getting ready to walk out the door. And so he goes, oh, Mel, what's wrong? Somebody died? Somebody's sick? Because he said he's been on the airplane. She hadn't been able to contact him. And she says, no, Bobby, if you move, I'm leaving. He said, well, I can see that. But he was just fumbling all over himself and trying to find words. Where are you going? What's happening? And she says, I'm leaving, Bobby. We're through. Oh, can you imagine? Sledgehammer force. Bam! We're what? Can we not talk about this? I had no clue. She said, that's right, Bobby. You've been clueless. I'm leaving, so if you move, I'm going to walk past you. And Bob says, no, please, let's talk this through. This is not right. We just can't drop everything. And she says, it's too late for talk. And so finally, Bob moved over to the side. She grabbed her suitcases and walked. And he said, I wish you'd just at least let me talk to you for a while. She walked onto her car and off she went. They did not see each other again until the divorce proceedings. Now, let me tell you what happens in between that time and the time that he goes for divorce proceedings. People rally around Bob. They do, don't they? They rally around Bob. Friends are putting their arms around him and encouraging him, doing everything they possibly can to buoy this guy up. And Bob decides that it's time for him to start lifting weights, so he does. He starts pumping iron. He starts running up Squaw Peak, which is a mile up and a mile down, in that hot Phoenix sun. Once in the morning, once in the evening. Man, that's 4 miles. Can you imagine that? I can't even think about that without getting tired. I went up with him once. And I said, Bob, I'm sucking wind, buddy. He says, that's okay, take your time. It's just the kind of people you want to hit because they're in such good condition. And so he was up and down, and pumping iron. He looks like a tree trunk with a head. So just pumping iron. Crazy. And so Kathy and I went down to see him. I preached in his church, hung out with his kids, the youth group, and went out for pizza. And all his kids were just loving on Bob like crazy, trying to let him know that he's important. But you know, ladies, you need to understand this about us men. Our egos are like soda crackers. Very fragile. Especially when it comes to our relationships. We look at ourselves as inadequate. That we're not providing. We're not producing. And so it will mess with a man's psyche. And he will back away and almost become a recluse. And that's why Bob was working so hard to maintain. And he went to the divorce proceedings. He stood there, he looked at his wife, and the judge said, you need to sign here. And Bobby says, I'm not signing. And the judge says, well, you've got to sign the papers. He says, I'm not signing. He says, well, why won't you sign? He said, Your Honor, when I married this woman, I stood in a church and I pledged my life to her. And I said these words, till death do us part. I meant that. And I cannot in clear conscience sign these papers. The judge looked at him and he said, son, you really love this woman, don't you? He said, I do, Your Honor. And when I made that commitment, I made it for life. And he says, well, I have to tell you, if you don't sign it, it'll go through by default. So the choice is yours. Bobby never signed the papers. The divorce happened, the judge stamped it, signed it, approved it, and Bobby was no longer married in the eyes of the law. One day in church, it's a Sabbath morning, heart's still broken, still reeking. 2 years have passed, and Bob just can't get out of this funk. Can't get out of it. Just can't do it. Tried everything. All of us buddies, we went down there. I went down there several times to see him. Tried to put my arms around him and woo him up. And he's the kind of guy that you just love. And he's such an idiot. He's got a great sense of humor. And we laugh. It's just ridiculous. Don't get a lot of sleep when we're around each other, but we laugh a lot. Some little 5-year-old girl comes up to Bob in church one Sabbath morning with a Band-Aid. Yeah, here you go. You see it? What is better to a kid than a Band-Aid? You fall down, scrape your elbow. Mommy wipes it off, puts a Band-Aid on it, you're good to go. Scrape knee, everything. So, to a child, a Band-Aid has magical properties. Something about these things that just angelic touch. She comes up, Mommy's 6'3", little 5-year-old girl. She comes up and she reaches up like this and she says, Pastor Bob? Pastor Bob? He says, what is it, honey? She said, I have a Band-Aid for you. And Bobby says, well, what's it for? She said, I was listening to Mommy and Daddy this morning at breakfast time, and they were talking about your broken heart. And I wanted to give you this Band-Aid for your owie. Bobby, he lost it, man. He got down on his knees, he put his arms around that little girl, and he held her close. He took the Band-Aid out of her hands, and he opened it up, and he put it over his heart. And he said, oh, that feels so much better. Thank you, darling. And he kissed her on the cheek, and she ran off like, so excited that she helped Pastor Bob. And Bob says, he called me up on Monday morning. He starts telling me this story. And I said, Bobby, I got to have that story to share if you don't mind. He said, buddy, tell it wherever you want. I said, I can't talk right now because I'm choking up. I thought the sweetness of a little 5-year-old kid who did not understand what kind of psychology needs to be involved in healing a man of a broken marriage. But you remember the cartoon, right? Or this picture of a dog licking a person's face, saying there's no psychologist like a dog licking your face. There's no psychology like that works, that kind of thing. And Bobby said, I decided at that moment that I was no longer a victim, but I was a survivor. He said, I cannot believe how out of the clear blue, God brought at the right time this little 5-year-old girl into my life with a Band-Aid to bring healing to my soul. He takes those simple things, doesn't he? If you ever get a chance to read the book, Disappointment with God by Philip Yancey, please take advantage of it. It's an incredible book. In that book, Yancey makes a statement, and I love this statement. I have etched it in my mind. He said this, in an awesome act of self-denial, God entrusted his reputation to ordinary people. Wow. Yancey tells the story of a young lady that was racked with cerebral palsy. She was in a wheelchair. She couldn't talk. She could make noise. She could not walk. And she would go through little spastic gyrations every now and then, and drool coming out of the side of her chin, out of the side of her mouth, dripping down. And she couldn't control it. She understood everything you were saying. If you were to come up to her and say, oh, Carol, listen to this joke. You tell her a joke, she could understand that. And she would, and her hands were just going every which way, and she would just, that was her way of laughing. And please, I'm not making fun of these people, okay? I'm just telling you, I'm just painting a picture for you. Well, at that time, people did not know what to do with Carol. So they put her in a nursing home where she spent 7 years of her life. Can you imagine? 7 years in a nursing home. She had 2 friends. One was a guy who would try to climb the drapes and would eat all the houseplants. Somebody always had to be watching him. When he came into Carolyn's room and he was putting on his little antics and tried to climb her drapes, she would just laugh. She thought that was so funny that he was even paying any kind of attention to her. And eat the houseplant, she thought that was so funny. And another girl was the girl that would come around, and she only knew one word, and that one word was mama. Mama, no, sweetie, I'm not your mama. Mama? No, honey. Mama? Well, when she went into Carolyn's room and said, Mama, Carolyn got all excited, man. Nobody ever called her mama. She was 7 years of this. Day in and day out in this nursing home. One day, Yancey doesn't say how this happened, but he said one day they discovered that inside this girl's mind was the mind of a genius. He said, I don't know how they did it. Whoa, we got to get her to school. So they did. They put her in a school, and she graduated high school in 5 years because of the communication problem, but she graduated with honors. Wow, we got to get her into college. So they got her in a small Christian college close by. They said, if anybody will care for her, these Christian kids will care for her. Boy, they were not wrong. Those kids, by the way, I love college kids. You need my heart beats for them. I've been at uni now for 29 years. And there's something about these kids that is really special. They don't know the word impossible. They don't want you to hear say, we've tried that before. They don't want to hear that. They are options. They're filled with options like and energy. Oh, energy. Talk about energy. Woo! Boundless. It's amazing. I just love working with these kids. And so when they put this kid in a Christian school, I could just envision those students wrapping their arms around this girl and rallying her and just making her feel like she was number one. They would go down the hall, pushing her to class and do little wheelies with her in the wheelchair. They just love doing that. We had a kid at Union that graduated a couple of years ago. His name was Harry, and he was in a wheelchair. He had cerebral palsy, but he actually could move himself along in the wheelchair when somebody wasn't pushing him. Most of the days, everybody was pushing him around. But one day, he came by my office, just rolling through the wheelchair, and I looked out, and you have to know this about me. I'm shameless, okay? And I'm very loud. And when he walked by, I went, Harry! And he went, what's going on, you big stud? He said, hey, Bill. How you doing, man? I said, dude, I feel so good today, I should be 2 people. He went, I like that, good. I said, you ready for Friday? Oh, yeah, man, party on. And he rolled into class, and I just missed it when he graduated. When he graduated, they rolled him across the aisle, and everybody stood up and cheered for Harry, because this guy had done it. And we rally around people like that aren't as strong as us, that don't have the vitality we have. We want to do everything we can to make it that way. And these kids put their arms around Carol, and they loved her up. The chaplain said, I want you to do a chapel talk some morning. Would you be willing to do that? I'll give you plenty of time. She got excited about that. He said, one of your friends could read your talk. I said, I just think it would be such a blessing for our kids to hear your testimony. Well, little were those kids ready for what happened that morning in chapel when Carolyn was going to do chapel. She's sitting up on the platform, drool coming out of her mouth, gyrations. Now notice how God takes the weak, and He takes the despised things, and He takes the things that are not, and He does something that you cannot explain in human language. She's sitting up there, her friend stands up and says, before I get into Carolyn's talk, you need to know what her testimony is. The verse that she has been living with for these years up to this point. The hallmark of her life. And she opened the Bible and read 2 Corinthians 4:7. You have read that probably 100 times. But I think today you'll find a little different meaning to that verse. Here's what it says. We have this treasure in jars of clay. Oh, and those jars can be broken, can't they? Because we are human. And humans can be broken. In fact, every one of us is broken. We live on a broken planet. We have broken bodies. We people break promises. It's a broken existence in which we find ourselves. But Carolyn says, and look at it, 2 Corinthians 4:7, she says, we have this treasure in jars of clay to show that this all-surpassing power we have is from God and not from us. I read that. I had to stop. And I had to reflect.
And I thought to myself, how amazing that a kid who can't speak and that a kid who can't walk would testify to such a thing as living in this jar of clay that she is in. But the power that has touched her life is not hers. It's from God. She also knows how the story is going to end. Because in the end, what does it say? God is going to make all things new. Johnny Erickson Tada, paralyzed from the neck down, sitting in her wheelchair, talking to a lieutenant who lost the lower part of his arm in Vietnam, listening to him complain and whine and moan that he no longer had a lower right arm. And here she is, paralyzed from the neck down. He's complaining to her. And she looked at him and she said, "Sir, with all due respect, I would rather be in this wheelchair and know God than to be on 2 good feet without Him." Perspective. God takes those weak things and He magnifies them. He does amazing things that you and I cannot wrap our minds around. And that student body was touched that morning as Carolyn's testimony came rocking through their world of collegiate life. Doesn't matter what you look like on the outside, man. You've got this jar of clay and the surpassing powers from God and not from us. I have one more. I got a good friend that was a camp counselor. Anybody ever been a camp counselor? For those of you that have, you know that that's the place where you go to atone for your sins. I told people a couple of weeks ago, I was in a church, and I said, I taught high school for 18 years. And I do believe in that Roman Catholic theology, the old theology where there is a purgatory. When you go to atone for your sins. I said, 18 years, I atoned for mine. And they all laughed, and they got the point. And I said, I got a good friend who was a camp counselor. It was an 8th grade boys camp. Need we say more? Oh man, did he get baptized with fire in that one. He said, man, these kids were so active and so alive and so energetic. And he said, we had one kid that showed up who had a partial cerebral palsy effect on his lower right leg. He said he would walk across the campground like this, dragging his right foot behind him. And when he talked, you could understand him, but you really had to pay attention. It was slurred. And he said, I watched this take place. He said, I couldn't believe my eyes. He said, there were kids lined up behind this guy, mimicking his walk, making fun of the fact that this kid had a limp. And they said, hey, let's walk like Billy. You know, he said, Billy's walking across and all the kids are lined up behind him doing this. Like that's the only better thing they had to do all day. And the first day he was there, he stopped and he asked somebody, and he broke into his half mouth, wait to the rap cabin. And the kid said, eat over there, Billy. And my buddy said, I watched this all week long. He said, I wanted to hit those kids 3 ways. Hard, fast, and continuously. The way they were treating this kid, how did they do this? What in the world? He said, but I got to tell you this. This kid was undaunted. It did not faze him one bit. You could tell when he was growing up, his parents realized the disadvantage that he was going to have. And they poured themselves into this kid's life. You're special. You're loved. God made you this way. And He's going to do some powerful things through you. And one day it's all going to be over. And He's bathing his mind with the fact that God's in control. God's in control. God loves you. Has a purpose for your life. And by the way, people, that's true. It doesn't matter what kind of life it is. It's God's life in you. Isn't that right? You have a unique purpose in your life. Every one of us do. And we all do our unique gifts differently. But it's us. God did not want cookie cutter people. All acting the same, talking the same, laughing at the same things. No, He made us different. For what? For the edification of the saints. Different gifts. Man, they must have poured into this kid because he would stand there and laugh with these guys at him. You're funny, man. I like you. They could not get him. Oh, what do 8th grade boys hate more than anything? Oh, they want to get under your skin. They want to get. I had a sophomore class once that was just this way. They were trying to get me, and I stopped one day and I said, "Do you guys realize how much I love having you come in every day?" It stopped them dead in their tracks. They were baffled. They were so dumbfounded they couldn't think of anything to say or do. They just looked at me like, "What did you say?" I said, "I love it when you guys come in here, man." I said, "You're off the wall. I love that. You're filled with life. I love that." One of them said, "Well, I wish our other teachers felt the same way." I said, "Well, they just don't appreciate you like I do. And they're missing out." After I said that, I kid you not, they were angelic. I don't know what it was. Some magical formula that I had. No, it's just that I accepted them for who they were. And they knew that I liked them. And this kid, the same way, he was laughing at them, laughing at him. Wednesday came along. My buddy's sitting in the cab. He said, "I had to sit there and eat my food. Just kind of sick of this, how these kids were acting all week long." And I heard the kids at my table saying, "Hey, our cabin has worship tomorrow night." And they went, "What? We do? What are we going to do?" And one kid says, I know. "What?" "Let's get Billy to do it." Billy's sitting way down on the end, and they said, "Hey, Billy, our cabin has worship tomorrow night. You want to do it?" And Billy stops eating his food. He looks at him and he says, "Yeah, I will." And then he said they were all snickering because he said, "Yeah, we can laugh at him when he gets up there and makes an idiot out of himself." He said that was it. That was the coup de grace. That was it. My cup was full. He said, "I was going to sit in the front row on the next night. I was going to sit there and after Billy's worship, I was going to stand up and I was going to lambast these kids and tell them that's not how you treat people. You don't have better respect for that. Why don't you stay home and grow up? And when you grow up, why don't you get out and make a contribution to society?" You know, he said, I was going to act like the devil serving the Lord. He said, I didn't have to do it. I sat in the front row. Billy got up. Took him a minute to get up to the platform. He said he stopped and he just broke into this big smile and pointed straight up. And he said, "Jesus loved me." And he said, "And I love Jesus." His parents had done an amazing job, hadn't they? This kid goes and sits down. That was his worship. And my buddy stood up. He said, I was going to give it to him. He said, I looked at the row behind me, and these boys all had their hands over their eyes. And he said, all I heard was... They had tried to make fun of this kid. And they witnessed the power of Jesus in that room that night. And no other way. My buddy said, we tried to do everything. We tried and brought in guys from the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, Major League ball player, who said my batting average went up when I started praying. Really? We do that, don't we? He said, that's how we do stuff. We parade all the beautiful, all the talented, all the glory, and bring them in, and it did not impact these kids at all. He said, but here's this kid that the builders rejected. He said, I could not believe it. He said, as I'm standing here today telling you this, Buell, there was a revival that broke out in that 8th grade Bible camp. And these kids were giving their heart to Jesus, man, and surrendering their lives. They were crying like crazy. And we had counselors running everywhere trying to take care of these kids. And he said that nothing else had worked. Nothing else had worked. But the stone that the builders rejected. Oh, what kind of God do you serve? He takes the weak. He takes the poor. He takes the despised. He nullifies the things that are so that we can see him a little clearer, to realize that he is not limited in what he uses to show his power to people on this planet. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Folks, that's the God we love. That's the God we've given ourselves to grow and to see and to know. Oh, look for him today. You may find him in a kid that walks like this. You may find him in a girl that does this. You may find him in a Band-Aid. Look for him. He will be seen by you, and he will be known. Let me pray with you as we close our time together today. Lord Jesus, I am so grateful that there is no limit to who you are. And what an amazing thing it is for us to grow every day and to experience goodness that we see in our own lives that show how much you love us and what a distance you will go for us. I thank you for lives like Billy and Carolyn. I thank you for that little 5-year-old girl who had absolutely no clue what she was doing, but you worked through her to touch my friend Bob's life. And I thank you for that. And I pray that during the season of Thanksgiving, that every one of us in this room, as we live our lives with thanksgiving, will experience this even fuller as we behold you in your loveliness and in your goodness. And for this, we'll all give you the praise and the glory in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. I'm going to close with this. Why don't you guys come up to sing? Mother Teresa used to stand in the streets of Calcutta with her 5 fingers up as she talked to her Sisters of Mercy every morning at 6 o'clock in the morning as they're getting ready to go into the streets to minister to the dying, to provide them with a nice place to sleep and something sweet to eat. Isn't that amazing? We live in this country with so much sugar. These people have nothing. And what she said, what a treat it was to see the smiles on their faces before they died, to be able to experience something so neat to the gustatory system. But she would stand up with her fingers, and here's what she would say, and this is what I want to leave with you today. You don't know what God is going to do in and through you today, but here's what she said. She said, sisters, what God does in you, what God does to you, what God does for you, is what God will do with you and through you, to show himself to those in need of his love. Be a channel, folks. Be a channel and let it flow. Let it flow. Thank you. God be with you.
Let's all stand and sing our closing song, number 88.
Let
Father, we ask that you lift us from our weakness to your strength, from our emptiness to your fullness. And we'll be careful to give you all the praise and all the glory because you alone are worthy of that. In Jesus' name, amen.